Okay, this animation is about seismic waves and the Earth's crust. Now, the first thing to appreciate here is that we tend to think of the ground beneath our feet as something very fixed and immovable, which on a small local scale it typically is, from day to day. However, looking at Earth on a very large scale, the surface of the Earth, which scientists call the crust, is actually made up of huge rock plates. These tectonic plates are on the top of the mantle, which is semi-solid. So they're able to move, causing friction to build up at the boundaries where two plates meet. And when this friction is overcome, large earthquakes occur. These plate boundaries, which are also called faults, are where volcanoes form, when hot liquid rock from underground erupts to the surface, as we can see here. Okay, the main theme of this animation is a detailed explanation of the physics of earthquakes. Now, the energy released in an earthquake travels as waves, moving out in all directions. Here we're seeing the two types of waves produced, primary and secondary waves. Basically, you need to learn the characteristics of these waves off by heart. Primary waves are longitudinal and can travel through solids and liquids. Secondary waves are transverse and can travel through solids only. Now, these waves are detected by instruments called seismometers. These are used to produce graphs that indicate the magnitude on the y-axis and the arrival time on the x-axis of the waves from the earthquake. As we can see here, the P waves always arrive first. Then the large peaks on the graph indicate the arrival of the S waves. The large peaks are actually a combination of the P waves and the S waves. Okay, now let's look at a real-world example of an earthquake in a part of the world that is very seismically active, southern Italy. This part of the Mediterranean Sea is close to a boundary between two major tectonic plates, the Africa Plate, just south of Sicily, and the Eurasian Plate, on which Sicily sits. Large earthquakes and volcanic activity are therefore more regular here than in other areas further away from the boundary. Now, scientists can use seismometers to work out exactly where these earthquakes originated. This is called the epicenter. So here, one seismometer is detecting an earthquake 95 kilometers away. But seismometers can only detect the distance waves have traveled, not the exact direction they came from. A second seismometer will help to pinpoint two possible locations for the earthquake's epicenter. Those locations are where the two circles cross. To pinpoint exactly where the earthquake originated, a third seismometer is needed. The circle indicating the earthquake's distance from this seismometer will undoubtedly coincide with the other two circles at one of those two intersections found by the first and second seismometers. So that's where the epicenter of the earthquake is, in this case under the sea, because the Earth's crust, the outer rock surface of the Earth, is partly underwater, of course. Right, now over the next 3 slides we're going to see how seismometers all over the world are able to tell us something fundamental about the Earth's inner structure. Let's imagine that a powerful earthquake occurs at the top of this image. The primary waves quickly travel out from the epicenter in all directions. These seismic waves reflect and refract when they reach boundaries. If you look closely at the path of the blue dots, which represent the waves, you can see that when they reach the core, they change direction slightly, and again when they leave the core. This is refraction. Now, because primary waves can travel through both solids and liquids, they travel everywhere inside the Earth, including through the outer part of the core, which is liquid. Okay, so looking at the same earthquake again, the secondary waves, represented here by the red dots, also travel out in all directions from the epicenter. However, notice here that these S waves are not able to pass through the outer core of the Earth. They can travel to the other side of the world through the mantle, but not through the core. Why? Well, as we saw in the earlier slide, secondary waves are transverse waves that can only travel through solids, not through liquids. And the outer core of the Earth is liquid, and therefore blocks these secondary waves. So let's look at the combined diagram of both the primary and the secondary waves, which are both produced at the same time by the earthquake. Remember that primary waves travel faster than secondary waves, so secondary waves will still arrive at the same seismometer on the other side of the world, but with a time delay. Okay, so recapping, first of all, always remember that earthquakes can occur anywhere on a tectonic plate because of friction between rocks on the plate. This explains why smaller earthquakes sometimes occur a long way away from the typical locations of major earthquakes, which usually occur near the faults between Earth's main tectonic plates. Second, in this slide, note the definition of the focus of an earthquake, which is subtly different from the epicenter. Third, make sure you understand the difference between primary and secondary waves, not just their speeds, but also the type of waves they are and the mediums through which they can travel. Finally, be very clear about why we know that some of the Earth's interior is liquid. The last 2 points on this slide explain this.